But I think the biggest brush with process was when I built an e-commerce store in Indonesia, because that's what you do when you're 25. And
Random.
The idea of staying in a stable job scared me more than leaving.
It took me a very long time to get my name out in the I mean, well, comparatively not long, because I've just been here for 19 months.
Well, I was going to say, you've only been here for 19 months, but not that very long. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of She's the Boss. Today, I am joined by Nicola Fleet-Milne, who is the founder and owner of FleetMilne Property. Hi, Nicola. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Daniela. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. And if you are watching for the first time and you haven't already subscribed to the channel, could you please make sure that you go and press that subscribe button now? And as usual, whilst watching, if there are any questions that come up throughout, please write in the comment section. If there's anything that really resonates with you, which I'm sure that it will, then please write your thoughts, your feelings, your opinions in the comment box. So, tell us about FleetMilne Properties. What gave you the inspiration to start, and what was the process of you starting the business?
Well, I think like most people who start a business, I started out of frustration rather than necessarily a desire to run my own business. Essentially, I had worked for a couple of high street agencies previously, and it got to the point where I just was so frustrated that it was, I personally don't believe that my industry is a difficult industry, but it's an industry that it's difficult to do it well. So I just was so fed up of all the politics and the nonsense that went on around me. So I just decided to put my money where my mouth was. I guess that to a degree, I was only 25, so what did I have to lose? And I just went for it. So.
And when you say went for it, what was the process? You registered a business. Did you go straight into getting an office, a premises, or did you work from home? Because there's so many different ways of doing it. Some people start and decide to go slow, and other people say, like, I'm just going to throw caution to the wind, get an office, I'm in business. How did you do it?
Well, I fully admit that I knew absolutely nothing about setting up a business or even running it. I think if I was giving anyone advice these days, I would say at least go and try and find some sort of support, which I think is probably more available these days than it was then, bearing in mind that in 2004, the internet existed and we used it, but not to any great degree. So I didn't get enough advice, and I borrowed some money from my boyfriend at the time. I borrowed 10 grand, and at the time that seemed to be fine, that wasn't a problem. The bank matched that with a 10 grand overdraft, and they happened, the bank HSBC put me in contact with with an accountant to help me actually set up the business, as in the paperwork. I knew so little that I ended up with my boyfriend being both somebody who I owed money to, but also they gave him shares, which was completely incorrect. He wasn't supposed to be a shareholder. I only discovered this a few years later. So I have definitely learnt as I've gone. Aside from doing the actual paperwork, I then, I can't work at home. I'm absolutely useless working at home. So I have to get up, I have to get dressed, and I have to leave the house and be in work mode. So I hired serviced offices, basically. I was quite bold on day one. I went for one that was big enough to have 4 people. I clearly had decided from a very early stage that this was going to be a growing business. I wasn't going to do everything the whole time, because to be honest, I just knew that I just didn't have the desire to do every single role in the company. I knew that I would need people, call it what you will, but it actually worked that way. So I had 4 desks. I bought 1 computer to start with, and 1 computer, 1 phone, 1 printer, all this kind of stuff. And on day one was sat there kind of, right, I'm ready to go now. Within 3-4 months, I had my first member of staff, and by the end of the first year, there were 4 of us. And in year 2, I moved to a bigger office in the same building. And year 3, I expanded that office to double its size. And after 3 years, we left and moved into proper, shop frontage as such. So proper agency type offices.
And for those who are watching who maybe or in the process of just starting their business, or have been in business for a year and are still working from home and not taking on any staff yet, I'm sure everyone's asking, how did you go from just you and 4 desks to getting staff so quickly? What was the process, and what would you say was the kind of winning formula for you that enabled you to grow so rapidly?
Guys, do you know what? It's one of those things you look back and you think, I really don't want to have rose-tinted glasses on. I don't want to try and fool myself that I just turned up on day one and there it all was waiting for me. There was a lot of hard slog. That boyfriend and I broke up within 2 years because I didn't really see him once I'd started up. I would stay till 11, 12 o'clock at night, and happily, I wasn't moaning about it. There was no part of it that left me thinking, oh, I really want to go home now. In fact, I would get to the end of a task and look round and go, oh, I could do that before I go. I genuinely really loved it. It was feet on the street. I got up, I left the office, I went and talked. So in my business, I need to go, I do city centre apartments. So I really need to go and at the time there were lots and lots of concierges around town who are guys who sit on reception basically at the front of these posh residential buildings. I would literally take them a coffee and go and chat to them and just ask them about their lives really. It didn't have to be a work chat, but inevitably someone in the building would say, I'm thinking of letting my apartment, and they would say, you should talk to Nicola. She's basically, I like her, and therefore I've made a decision that she must be good at what she does. So the fact that I was then good at what I did was useful to back me up, but it's all biz dev, isn't it? It's all about people. If people like you and think they can relate to you, then they're going to give you their trust and their business. So I was just pounding the streets, just visiting. I must have drunk a ton of coffee. Honestly, years later, I invested in a coffee shop because that's how much coffee I drink. So yeah, it was just hard work. I was very guilty in the early days of taking on too much. And I think I got to the stage where the first person I took on was the person who would do the viewings, who would meet and greet people and would take people into the apartments. Primarily because in my industry, whilst that could be viewed, and certainly if you were coming from a different area, you might think, but that's your bread and butter. That's the very first representation of you. That's the face of your business. The difference in the city centre is when someone turns up to rent here, they're going to look around, 10 apartments all in one go. It is basically ferrying people around, opening doors, answering questions, making polite conversation. But for me at that time, that was not as important as then being able to follow that up with the service behind all of that. So it's laborious, and as long as you have somebody who presents themselves well, is articulate and is nice, then actually it's fairly straightforward. So that was the first person I brought on, and I brought somebody that I knew from previous work. And she really loved it. And then it got to the point that we'd let so many that I needed someone to help me with the admin in the office, because I was now sort of doing 2 o'clock in the morning trying to do all the paperwork and the accounts and all that kind of stuff. Because equally in this business, you don't just do your own business accounts, you're also doing client accounting, so receiving rent, paying bills, sending the money back out to landlords, etc. So it's a lot of process, and it has to be followed correctly. So.
And in terms of taking on your new staff, were you scared of, because I assume at 25 that would have been your first opportunity of managing people, were you not scared about that? And how did you ensure that the process worked smoothly? So I know for a lot of the clients that I've worked with that are taking on their first member of staff, one of the things that they're always scared of is, how do I get them to do what I want them to do? And if they don't do what I want them to do, how do I tell them without it causing loads of friction when there's just 2 or 3 of us. So how was the process for you, and did you come up against any sort of challenges with managing staff, especially because of your age as well?
Yeah, I suppose just being really brutal. I've always been, what do they call it these days? I wasn't bossy, I was assertive. I was assertive, confident. I've always been, I've never been scared to tell people what I think needs to be done. But I think that I have a nice way of doing it. I don't like to be aggressive. I don't really believe in needing to be aggressive. That's the kind of thing you keep in your pocket for when you truly need it. And it's been very rare that I ever have. So really, if you just talk to somebody on a level, you don't have to be. Being the boss is not about making it very clear in every single thing you ever say to somebody, I am your boss. It's about winning their respect. So, and as for telling people that they perhaps aren't doing it the way that you prefer them to do it, or have they thought of an easier or a more efficient or a softer way of doing something, again, not frightened to sit down and talk to people and just say, look, I overheard you dealing with that, and let's have a bit of a debrief. I really liked the way that you said that thing, but perhaps when you got to this point, I could tell that you were feeling quite defensive, so you need to work on noticing your own triggers. What is it that I'm doing when I'm suddenly giving away the fact that I'm stressed? So I would sit down with people. Again, it takes time. It's not a simple fix. You don't just give someone a manual, say read that, and then they're a perfect employee. And there were things that I got wrong. I had a couple of staff. Weirdly, the people I've always struggled with the most were the much older people. I had a lady who worked with me who just befuddled me. She clearly hated working with somebody who was half her age. And I just kept saying, so don't work here, it's fine. If you're not happy, because you're not making me happy, go out of it. So, but like I said, there have been times I fired my first member of staff, and I mean fired, because I sat her down. It was less than 2 years she'd been with me, and I had to sit her down and say, this isn't good enough. We've been through ways of trying to make it better, but it isn't improving, and therefore you need to leave. I fired that first person within those first 3 years, and I'm not a robot. I cried afterwards. I was really devastated, both for me, for her, but also the stress before, because how are they going to react? You never know. And the relief afterwards. I mean, the relief is always the biggest thing, no matter how hard it is. If you know it's the right thing to do, just suck it up, get on with it, do it right, be pleasant about it. I've never been mean, but once it's done, it's just such a relief.
Well, unless you're me and you take too long to do it, and then they decide that they want to take you to an employment tribunal, then it's not that much of a relief.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
yes,
I asked the question because one of the challenges that I had when I was running my first business was the same with what you said. One of the people that I employed was significantly older than me, and she really took issue with that. And when I would try and tell her what to do, or that I didn't like something, she'd get really aggressive with me. And it's weird because in my personal life, I'd say that people say that I can be quite aggressive. But when I was in business, for some reason, I got really timid. Like, I don't know what to do. I can't deal with the conversation. I just kept leaving it. And then in the end, when I fired her, she was, I think, a week or a day, something really close, over the amount of time she'd been in post to be able to take me to a tribunal. And
that's 2 years, yeah.
That's a story for another day. But I think hearing when someone does it right, that's always useful advice. So you mentioned before that you'd invested in a coffee shop. Obviously, you've got your business, and I know that you have your kind of hands in many different pots and pies. Would you say that you have always had that kind of entrepreneurial spirit? Was there anything as a child that you can remember and think to yourself, yes, I can see there that I was demonstrating these entrepreneurial skills really early? Or did people, and I know with girls, it's always, you're so bossy. I hate that terminology, but were you exhibiting any of those traits from young? And did you know that you was going to be an entrepreneur?
I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was until I think I got to university. My mum's always been very, what's the word? The best way of putting this is me and my mum are really nosy people and we're interested in everything. So it means you get into a lot of things because you hear something and you go, oh, what's that? And you want to get involved. So I've always been that way. I definitely was, just to use the word bossy, but I was a bossy little girl. I had a little brother who, and I'm not telling you anything I haven't said to him, but it was like a bit, he'd just kind of like meander around. And if you didn't tell him where to go or what to do, he'd just meander and wander and do nothing. So I kind of took control of that. So I always took control of him. I know that when I was in junior school, I got sent to the headmaster for drawing felt tip tattoos on people for £1.
Brilliant.
Because, you know, I needed a bit of extra pocket money. So, but I got in trouble for that. So I didn't do anything majorly entrepreneurial when I was younger, and I am genuinely very impressed with anybody who is doing something when they are, I don't know, a teenager or something, because I just don't know where people get the bottle, but all kudos to them. But no, when I went to university, I wanted to be an airline pilot. But my teachers at school had told me that I would probably be the general manager of a hotel. And I was fairly determined that was not what I was going to be. Although I think the irony these days is that being the boss of a high street agency isn't massively dissimilar to how a general manager is of a hotel, having to manage all those different types of people. So maybe my school was right in the end. But yeah, no, my entrepreneurial side, it wasn't something that I kept thinking, I want to run my own business, because one of my first jobs out of university was at Knight Frank, and I was like, I want to be a partner here. I want to go to the top. I want to be an equity partner. So I always wanted to go to the top. I was always very, you know, I didn't see I can do what I'm told. And I think I demonstrate that a lot with all the boards that I'm sat on. But I'm not prepared to just sit and be told the whole time what to do and be passive and, you know, never question anything. I question everything. I still question everything now. Why people are doing it, why they're still doing the same process I taught them 5 years ago. Why is it not changed already? Why is it not better? Because, you know, I might start you off, but you ought to improve these things. So no, since I set up the business, and I think perhaps having set FleetMilne up and then realised that it's not as terrifying, get the right people around you. And sometimes that costs money, and sometimes that is completely free. It's just time. But get the right people around you, and to be honest, you know, you'll be well supported. So,
have there been any moments on the journey where you felt, actually, I don't know, well, not even I don't know if I can do this anymore, but has there been any incidents or pivotal moments where you've thought, this is too much, I just don't know if I want to do this anymore?
it's tough. I've had quite a lot of instances where I've thought, I don't need to put up with this crap anymore. But it's not from me. It's I absolutely adore my team, but employees are the hardest work, and I fully understand how some people go from running a team to setting up a business that requires no staff whatsoever, because it just makes your life so much easier not to have them. But at the same time, you know, my business, I can't run without a team, not unless I want to be tiny. And then there's kind of no point, because I was setting out to prove that actually this, you know, the city could have much better service, and we have. And my competitors, I go to lunch with various ones of them quite frequently, and they will always say that whatever we're doing pulls them up. That they will reinvent, they will innovate, because they have to keep up with us, if not be as good as us. Sometimes they're trying to go beyond us, and that's great. So, you know, that was kind of because of my frustrations. I wanted to prove that actually you don't have to have letting agents being rubbish. They actually can be really good. They can listen to you, and they can solve things and help you. So yeah, I've never wanted to give up what I do, But there have been times when I've just thought, oh, I just need to go away for a year. I just need to not be involved in, because I'm going to say something I regret.
So you made an interesting statement. You said that you meet up with competitors. How has that come about? It's very rare that you hear people say, "Yeah, I just go for a coffee or lunch with my competitors."
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
started that?
Oh, I started it every time. But to be honest, Birmingham city centre's a small place, really. And I would just pick up the phone, just say, look, do you fancy going for a coffee? It started with, let's go for a coffee, occasionally it'd be a glass of wine. Some of them are terrible gossips, which is lovely. And others, you start getting blood out of a stone. And some of them refuse to meet me because they hate me, and that's fine. I assume that I just intimidate them, or I'm just better than them, the usual. Yeah, just try and keep in touch with them, because actually it's a good way to drive best practice as well, if you can talk to each other about, so this thing is coming up and this is how we've dealt with it, how are you guys dealing with it? And then you share things, oh, that's a really good idea. Yeah, and they steal a bit from you and you steal a bit from them, and actually you all end up with better processes. It can only be better for the clients and for the tenants anyway. So yeah, I think there's an element of, I like it when people feel, I think I do put them on the spot a little bit and say, come on, let's go for a coffee. I mean, what do you say to that? You've got to be really rude to say, no, I don't want to talk to you.
No, it's interesting because with a lot of the clients that I've worked with, when you speak to them about competitors, there's like a real fear. Oh, if I, even just with like promoting stuff, if I put that out too soon, then the competitors are going to steal it, and then, oh my gosh, then what happens? So the fact that you just go straight to them, I find that's really quite brave, because not a lot of people would not even entertain the idea of it, let alone suggest it.
Yeah. I think I see us though as market leaders. I have pretty much since we set up, because I would just boldly go where they wouldn't. And so sometimes they would follow and other times they wouldn't for a few months. And then all of a sudden, what a surprise. Like I had one of my competitors, we've just had an office refurb, and he texted me and said, I see you're doing something to the office. Don't forget to send me pictures so I can copy it for my own office.
Brazen with it as well.
Brazen. I was like, yeah, whatever. So it just makes it easier.
Yeah, no, definitely. I see the value in it. It just would be helpful if other people do.
Yeah, true.
So obviously you're a woman, and obviously I'm quite passionate about women in business. And one of the questions that I really wanted to ask you is, have you found that being a woman in your industry and also being a successful entrepreneur in Birmingham, have you felt that people have been and not just your competitors, just generally, have people, number one, been intimidated by it? And have you, number two, especially in the early days when you first started, did people underestimate what you could do because of your age and because you're a woman? So that's two questions. And then the third question, I always do this, I have a question tsunami, and then I forget what the first one was. And then the third question, have you found that people have treated you differently, and whether that be better or worse because of the fact that you're a woman?
Okay, so woman, age, intimidation. Okay, so when I started, I was 25, and literally just, to be fair, just turning 26 not long after. No, my age helped me creep below the radar, I think, because all of my competitors at the time were male, were agencies run by a male, and they were all a good decade older than me, minimum. So I think to a degree, I probably played the game a little, if I'm completely honest. You know, I probably played down my knowledge sometimes when I knew a lot better, but and I reached out to some of my competitors to say, I'd really appreciate your help. I want your advice. And of course, they quite like that because, I mean, I like it now. If someone says to me, I would like your advice, you go, my advice? Oh, okay. Then. Yeah, let me all my advice to you. So age wasn't a problem because actually I think they underestimated how far I could go. So I had calculated in my first year I would like to let 80 properties. And I was like, it's a bit punchy, but let's go for it. you know, as the saying goes, if you reach for the stars, well, you probably land on the moon, kind of thing. So, you know, stretch yourself a little. Anyway, we're at 120, and I think that it surprised me, but it also surprised my competitors. So probably years 2 and 3 were a little tougher. One competitor was vile to me, but to be honest, I think it was just fear, pure fear from him. And if he ever watches this, he'll know who he is. But the rest of them have been super lovely. Keep in contact with them. You know, they've been really good. Weirdly, I never really noticed the woman thing. Because I don't know, I'd spent 3 years at uni as a reservist in the Royal Air Force, where that's a big boys' club, you know, that is male dominated. I quite enjoyed being one of the only females because you kind of, I don't know, you, like I said, you play the game and you use it to your advantage rather than going, oh, woe is me, I'm the only girl, and they're just, you know, they're disrespecting me. Actually, they weren't disrespecting me. Part of it is they just didn't really know how to deal with me, especially if they'd had only blokes to deal with previously. Women just, you don't deal with them in the same way. So I learned how to deal with guys who didn't know how to deal with women. So you just go, okay. And there are times where you think, oh, wow, I mean, that was a bit rude, but just, you know, deal with it and move on. Take it as a lesson for yourself, because they're too old and they're too long in the tooth and they're not going to change. So you might as well take that and maybe use it to your advantage. So if they're basically saying to you on one hand, you can't do that thing because you're a woman, you then go, okay, so you're saying I can't do that side, but therefore I must be able to do this thing because I'm a woman, and therefore I can get something that I want out of this situation. So I also think that kind of underestimating me because I was young was the same for me being female. They were all boys, so they all knew how each other behaved. They'd known each other in the markets for ages, and they didn't go out for coffee together, where all of a sudden I was the only person contacting them all, making friends with them, and I had a relationship. So because I wasn't a threat, because I wasn't like the rest of the things that they worried about. So yeah, so being a female, no, men have advantages, but women have just as many advantages in my mind. It's just knowing what they are, when to deploy them, when not to, when just to hold back and just be one of the people in the room. I went to something recently where a woman made a really big point of being, there were only 2 females in a room of 12 people. And she made a really big point of telling everybody around the table there's obviously only 2 women in here. But the problem is that then made us stand out for the wrong reasons, as opposed to just doing your thing, having, you know, articulating your point of view, adding your value. She kind of went on about it too much, and I was a bit kind of leaning away, going, "Don't recommend this, please." Yeah, I don't want to. But what were your other questions at the end of that?
Well, you kind of answered them all, because the final one was, have people treated you differently? So I guess you kind of said yes, but not necessarily.
Yeah, yes and no. Sometimes I want to be treated differently, and sometimes I don't. But I find that I think I probably manage the scenario to get me what I want. So if I want to be treated completely differently, I can play up to that. And if I don't want to, then I can blend in and kind of, you know, not be treated any differently. So, yeah.
So you said before that for the first year you had a goal of 80 lets. How important do you think for someone starting and growing a business, how important do you think having really well-defined sales targets is?
It is really, really useful because actually just week on week, I actually had, you remember Children in Need always have that thermometer?
Oh,
I
yeah.
basically drew myself a thermometer and was like, and I would just like write another little red bit in, and another little red bit, and another little red bit, and you're thinking, oh, I'm getting there. It's great for encouraging yourself. It also, on those days when you think, can I be asked with this anymore? I mean, I remember going on my one and only holiday that first year with my best friend. We went to Brussels for a long weekend, and I spent the whole weekend on the phone to an irate client, which at the time was the end of the world. And even months later, was, oh, can't believe it. He could have waited till Monday. He absolutely could have waited till Monday. But he just wanted to ruin my weekend. So, you know, weekends like that, and you think, oh, I really want to be doing this. Do I really care enough? Actually being able to look at something and go, do you know what? I'm really close to what I set myself. Or I've gone beyond what I set myself. Crack on. Just keep doing it. It does motivate you.
Has there been a pivotal moment in your career where you said to yourself, wow, I've made it, I've done it? And what did that feel like?
Oh, that one's tough. Because in the very, very early days when I left uni, my first marker was, one day when I have a BMW, I will have made it. And then I ended up working for a company that I really, truly hated, but they gave me a BMW. It was a crap one as well. It was so old and so rubbish. But I remember thinking, yeah, having a BMW is not really a marker of success in the same way that I thought it was going to be. So, yeah, kind of like, oh, I think the day that we opened the office on Cornwall Row was a real marker for me. That was like, how many years in were we? 8 years by that point. That was 7 years ago. Opened an office on the premier street in our district at the height of the recession, or actually no, at the tail end of the recession, but it was still recession time. I remember thinking, yes, that's when you know that you know there's a real marker for you. So, and I think the first time we hit £1 million turnover was also really nice, because that it's just bigger. What did we? Sorry.
What did you do? I always obviously I haven't hit £1 million turnover yet, but I always think at the point when that happens, I'm going to actually have a party with like maybe 6 people, not a big party, just a small one. Loud, get some cake, food. Did you do anything, or is that just me being dramatic?
You know what? We even had our 15th birthday recently, and I think I went for a glass of wine. So
that was going to be my next question. Aren't you 15? When's the party?
Yeah, I'm really rubbish at that. I've always been. I've had the odd party over the years, and for those who do know me, know that in my time I have been a bit of a party animal, but I just don't. I spend all day organising things, and the last thing I want to do after out of hours is then organise things again. When we go on holiday, the worst person. I miss flights. I go to the wrong airport. I get the dates wrong. Basically, I need managing when I go on holiday, because it is my turn to completely shut down. So I never actually got round to. I think we probably went for a bottle of prosecco in Fumo or something when we hit £1 million. It was just, I was like, okay.
No, but I guess
we
that's
had about 25 staff as well, so I was like, oh.
No, well done, because I'm sure there's going to be people watching that who are going to be thinking, I want to get to my £1 million turnover, even if it is to just go for a glass of prosecco.
Yeah.
Another question I had: you are very well connected. You said before that you're on a variety of different boards. How important do you think it is to strategically position yourself in the city that you're operating in? And has it happened organically for you, or did you actually say, right, strategically, this is what I need to do to raise my personal brand, and I'm going to do this, this, and this? So 2 questions: how important is it, and was it something that happened naturally, or was it planned for you?
Yeah. I think it's really important, because you can walk into your office every morning, shut the door, and just work hard. But if you don't really know anybody either in your industry or your local geography, I personally think it does leave you very insular. I just don't think you get as much benefit, but we get so much business from word of mouth. And that's just because people know us and like us. And it's not necessarily our current clients. It could just be people we know. Mm-hmm. Whether or not I actually was strategic about it, I think it's a little bit half-half. I think half was targeted people, and half of it was just chattering to people, just making friends, being nice to people, taking an interest in other people. The more you take an interest in them, the more likely they are actually to ask you about what you do. And I've always been very set against hard sale. I've always said to my team, if you're going out and networking, just talk about stuff that interests you. It doesn't have to be, do you need to rent a flat? Oh, you don't, I'm off. Because you might not need to rent a flat today, but maybe any time. There are people that come to us now that I met 10 years ago, but they've always known when it comes to me wanting to do that, I'm going to go to Nick's firm because, I know her, I trust her. She's nice, therefore her team must be nice. And because nice people only do good jobs, therefore they'll all be good at their jobs. So I do think to know people is essential. It's also essential when you are having that date where you go, I give up, I don't want to do this anymore. There are a few people that I will pick up the phone to and say, are you free for a glass of wine right now? And people go, yes, let's go and talk about it. And it could only be half an hour, 40 minutes. But you might come back to the office going, okay, I'm calm again because I just had this moment and I had to get it out. And you cannot sit and moan to your team about your team. It's just, you just don't do that. You've got to draw that line. So knowing people is both useful for business, but it's also useful for your personal state of mind and sometimes advice. Like, this is happening either in the industry or, Brexit. Well, what are you guys? How does Brexit affect you? What are you doing? How serious do we think it really is for every business, or how much do we think that they're, trumping up the possibilities or the worries for everybody? But to know people means you've got an advice network, and they're so useful for everything. Whether it's strategic, there were some people that I was like, I know I want to meet that person, and I would scan invite lists, or I joined Birmingham Future in 2006, and that was definitely a huge bonus for me. I met so many people who are some of my greatest friends today and really good business colleagues, and that's one of those organisations that's for a time in your life. So I'm beyond Birmingham Future now, but would I push people towards it who are at that right time? Absolutely. I'd really push them that way, because you're meeting all your peers and people do so many different jobs. So, I would go to an event and I'd be sat next to a lawyer on one side, an HR consultant on the other. Neither of them do what I do, but they still have the same stresses every day. They still worry about things, and, it is really good.
It's hard though. Would you say you're naturally I don't know if confident's not the word. Are you naturally good with people? Because for example, for me, I can speak to you one-on-one, but the idea of having to go out and meet people en masse really stresses me out. So I have to be a little bit more strategic, because I know I just don't like being around people, to be honest. So if anyone's watching and they also don't like being around people, is there any advice that you would give? How do you overcome that and still be able to be known in your industry and in your city?
Yeah, it is a difficult one, because naturally, yes, I can walk into a room. I actually prefer to go networking on my own and not with another person. If you go in a pair or a group, you end up sticking together the whole night. And to be honest, if you go with your friends, you might as well have just gone to the bar, because you're not going to have met anybody new, really. I always think if I'm on my own, I can drop into a conversation. You can say the awkward things like, "Oh, hi, hope you don't mind me interrupting, but I just heard you talk about that, and it just sounded really interested. Do you mind if I join you?" No one's going to say, "No, go away." They'll go,
But
"Oh,
even
of course,
even you just saying that makes me feel like, oh my gosh, that is my worst. I hate doing that. Like, I forced myself to do it, but I hate it with a passion. Really hate it.
It's tough, but that's okay. So they say that there are certain things in business that you just have to teach yourself to do. This is one of those things where you go, do you know what? The other 90% of my job, piece of cake, and I love it. I have to do this thing. I hate accounts. I hate the detail of going through line by line. But I'm like, right, this is now time put aside. I have to do it, because if I don't do it, I won't understand it. And my biggest fear is being caught out not knowing something, and being put on the spot and going, I don't know. And so I'm terrified of someone asking me something about money and my accounts that I can't answer. So I have to make myself knowledgeable about it. So, and I don't know, sometimes I've had nights where I've gone to a networking do, and as I've arrived, I've thought, I'm so tired, I can't be bothered with this. And there's the odd event I go to where I walk in and I look around and I go, Daniela's over there, right, I'm going to go and talk to her because I know you, it's going to be easy, we can chat about stuff that we want to talk about, and that's fine. And I'll forgive myself that from time to time, but it's not how I would approach every single time. So, and I especially can't deal very well if I take one of my team and they're terrified, and so they want to follow me around all night because I'm a bit like, I'm now just babysitting you. Yeah. So
I think
yeah,
that's really, really good advice in terms of, focus on the fact that everything else that you love and you just have to do this. And that's what I've tried to do, and the same with my clients, particularly around finance, because normally people, like what you just said, they hate dealing with anything to do with finance, but it has to be done. So it is, it's really about making sure that whether you like it or not, it gets done. And you do.
The only other thing I would say about the networking thing is I think the room's full of people who are worried about it. So everyone's just got to be kinder to each other and accept that actually we're all, when you see that person stood on their own, go and talk to them. Hi, I noticed you waiting over here. My name's Daniela, how are you? And then people are like, oh, thank you for talking to me. You never know, you might make a friend for life. But yeah, sometimes maybe not walking up to the group if that's terrifying, but picking off the people who are looking a bit nervous, and they're there for the same reason you are, and they're probably as nervous, probably more nervous than you are. So
yeah, no, definitely good advice. And then moving into the advice portion of the interview, and thinking about your journey, it's been a really exciting journey for you and I'm assuming this generally seems to have been kind of uphill without all of this. With that in mind, I think that your advice is going to be particularly useful. What 3 pieces of advice would you give to someone who is sitting at home and thinking, I would love to start a business and I would love to have kind of the same kind of trajectory that Nicola's had? What would you tell them?
Okay, so my first piece would probably be know the industry that you're going into. I've seen a number of people launch something entrepreneurial in an industry that they have zero experience in, and I don't understand that at all. You've got to have some grounding. If you want to set up a coffee shop, for example, do you know what? Go and work in one for a while. Learn about the actual industry, because these things are never as simple as you say they are. Mm-hmm. You just said, I assume you haven't done this. Oh my gosh, we've done that. Of course we've done that. But the external perception is different to internally. So,
I said not this.
Oh, okay.
Which is a bit different.
Yeah. We're currently making one of those, and it's great, because it makes you tougher. But not everybody will know about it. So you can, every business is going to look like a swan with that crazy, furious paddling under the surface. But it's made always a lot easier if you do actually know the industry. So get a grounding in whatever industry it is, definitely. I know it's such a well-trodden phrase at the moment, but be kind. I just don't think there's that real old-fashioned view that to be successful you've got to be terrifying, or the boss walks in and everyone cowers, and it's just not that way. A lot of people are going through all sorts of things. You never know what someone else is going through at the end of, you could be on the phone to somebody and they're a bit horrible to you. Rather than being horrible back, just take a deep breath and think, well, actually, anything could have happened to them. Anything could have happened in the last 24 hours, whatever. Who knows what they're going through? And if you're kind back to them, you'll generally find that they come back round and they'll be kind to you. And actually, I just prefer working around kind people, because life's too short, really, isn't it? I don't want to fight my way through the whole thing. So, because you've got to enjoy what you're doing. So, and I think my third piece would be you have to give it your all, because again, I've known a few people that have gone into everyone thinks being an entrepreneur is like this flash in the pan thing that you overnight millionaire, and you know it's not. I'll even go as far as saying, I don't even know her proper name. Is it Kendall Jenner or something, like the world's first self-made?
Kylie Jenner.
Yeah,
That's not self-made.
yeah.
Continue.
Well, there you go. And that's exactly my point. Is that you kind of make your own publicity in that sense, but you've got to underpin it with hard work. You've always got to underpin it with hard work. Even with her, yes, she had money to start with, but if she's going to sustain this and actually keep this going, she can't just ignore it. She can't play with it sometimes when she feels like it. She's got to keep going every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And it is exhausting. And there are lots of other things you've got to juggle, whether you end up with kids or, just other halves. Who knows? You can have a parent who becomes really super ill, or you could get a partner who's hit by a bus and ends up in a wheelchair or something. You never know what's coming. You've got to be able to balance still giving it your all, but I guess also knowing when just to put it down for the day and go home and sustain actually everything else that goes on in your life. So, I think those would probably be pearls of wisdom for the day.
Mm-hmm. No, I love it. Final question, I keep asking more questions, but if you could go back to your 25-year-old self and say something to you, what would you say?
Oh, I think probably one of two things. Firstly, Nicola, go and do a 1 day a week MBA for the next 2 years, because that 1 day you actually, in the grand scheme of things, will not miss, but it will be invaluable to you. And secondly, that part about actually sometimes do put your pen down and go, right, I have done everything I can do today, because actually that extra 20 minutes and that extra 20 minutes might not actually be as worth it. So it's that kind of work smart rather than work hard. I still think in the early days, there's no substitute for time put in, to be honest, and effort. But yeah, I think I'd just be I'd say to myself, forgive yourself a little more. Sometimes go on a holiday and be on holiday. It's okay. The world's not going to end. You're actually not the Prime Minister. So, yes.
I love that. And if people want to find out more about you and about your business, where can they find that information?
So our website is fleetmilne.co.uk, one word. And I'm on LinkedIn and stuff like that. Annoyingly, I think you can literally Google Nicola Fleet-Milne and loads of stuff comes up. So if you fancy stalking me, that's how.
Thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed that conversation. And if you watching have enjoyed it as well, make sure you click that like button, and please share in your networks if you think that anybody else can benefit from hearing some of the pearls of wisdom that Nicola has shared with us today. And remember, as always, think big, take action, and keep pushing. Thanks for watching.